It's time for the podcast. Yeah, the podcast is starting.
What's a podcast?
It's all gonna be alright in the end. It's gonna be alright. And if you've got some worries, my dear little friends, please rest your busy minds, because it's finally time for stories from now.
Psst, it's time for the podcast. Welcome back to the old library, everybody. My name is Captain Blunderface, and Deprecatus here has a little something he wants to share. Why don't you go ahead, Deprecatus? Oh, you like that Nicola shares thoughts after the stories? Well, of course. I think we are all 200% here for that. What did you say? Didactic? Didactic? What word is that? Why are you saying that? Okay, I'll look it up. Fine. Okay. What do we have here? Didactic, yada, 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 definition. Okay, didactic, intended to teach, particularly having moral instruction as an ulterior motive. Didaktikos, if I'm saying that right, is a Greek word that means apt at teaching. Something didactic does just that. It teaches or instructs. You want me to keep reading? Okay. A didactic piece of writing is one that is meant to be instructive as well as artistic. So, Deprecatus, why are we looking up this word? I'll understand after the story. That's very mysterious, Deprecatus. We'll see. But before we invite Nicola on, we have a shout-out, and a very special birthday shout-out at that. Today's episode is specifically for Hendrix in London, Ontario. It is Hendrix's birthday, and her ultra-cool parents wanted her to feel special. So, Hendrix, happy birthday. And this episode is for you. Oh, and it looks like we just got a message from our sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by the all-new Stories From Now and Then coloring book companion, with which you can color along with the stories as you listen to them. To find out more, go to storiesfromnowandthen.com. And with that, I think you know who's on. It's Nicola.
Okay, today's story time is a bit of a special one, because instead of having one story, we're going to have 5 mini-stories. These are very old stories from a time long, long ago, and they were written by someone called Aesop. Aesop wrote stories to teach lessons to people. It was very clever of Aesop to do this, because often when we hear a lesson through a story, we'll be more likely to remember it. You might even know some of these stories. They became very famous, but some of them might be new to you. Let's get started. These are a few of Aesop's fables. The first one is called The Tortoise and the Hare. Now, it's not a hare like the hair on your head. This is a hare like a wild rabbit. Once upon a time, a hare was making fun of a tortoise for being so slow upon his feet. "Well," said the tortoise, "let's run a race, and I'll bet that I win." "Oh," replied the hare, who was much amused by the idea. "Yes, let's try and see." And it was soon agreed that the fox should set a course for them and be the judge. When the time came, both started off together, but the hare was soon so far ahead that he thought he might as well have a rest, so down he lay and fell fast asleep. Meanwhile, the tortoise kept plodding on, and in time reached the finish line. At last, the hare woke up with a start and dashed on at his fastest, but only to find that the tortoise had already won the race. The lesson from that story, you've probably heard this, is that slow and steady wins the race. The second story is called The North Wind and the Sun. Once upon a time, the north wind and the sun were having an argument because each of them said that he was stronger than the other. Finally, they agreed to test their strength upon a man who was going for a walk. Their challenge was to see which of them could soonest strip him of his coat. The north wind had the first try, and, gathering up all his force for the attack, he came whirling furiously down upon the man, and caught up his coat as though he would wrestle it from him by one single effort. But the harder he blew, the more tightly the man wrapped it round himself. Then came the turn of the sun. At first he beamed gently upon the man, who soon unbuttoned his coat and walked on with it hanging open. Then the sun shone forth in his full strength, and the man, before he'd gone a few steps further, was very quick to throw his coat right off and finish his walk carrying it. The lesson from that story says persuasion is better than force. I like that, but I think another version of that lesson could be that there are different kinds of strength, and sometimes one kind of strength is more useful than another. The third story is called Mercury and the Woodman. What's a woodman? I think it's an old word for a lumberjack or a forester. Here we go. A woodman was cutting down a tree on the bank of a river when his axe glanced off the trunk, flew out of his hands, and fell into the water. As he stood by the water's edge, lamenting his loss, Mercury appeared. Mercury was one of the old Roman gods, like a magical being. So Mercury appeared, and he asked him the reason for his sadness. And when he heard what had happened, out of pity he dived into the river and, bringing up a golden axe, asked the man if that was the one he had lost. The woodman replied that it was not, and Mercury then dived a second time and, bringing up a silver axe, asked if that was his. "No, that is not mine either," said the woodman. Once more, Mercury dived into the river and brought up the missing axe. The woodman was overjoyed at recovering his property and thanked Mercury warmly. And Mercury was so pleased with his honesty that he made him a present of the other 2 axes. Now later that day, when the woodman was telling the story to his friends, one of his friends was filled with envy of his good fortune and decided to try his luck for himself. So he went and began to chop a tree at the edge of the river, and before long he managed to make his axe drop into the water. Mercury appeared as before, and when he heard that his axe had fallen in, he dived down and brought up a golden axe, just as he had done on the previous occasion. Without even waiting to be asked whether it was his or not, the friend cried, "That's mine! That's mine!" and stretched out his hand eagerly for the prize. But Mercury was so disappointed at his dishonesty that he not only declined to give him the golden axe, but he also refused to go and get the one that he had thrown into the river. The lesson of that story is that honesty is always the best policy. The fourth story is called The Milkmaid and Her Pail. Once upon a time, a farmer's daughter had been out to milk the cows, and she was coming back to the farm, carrying her pail of milk upon her head. As she walked along, she started thinking in this way. The milk in this pail will provide me with cream, which I will make into butter and take to market to sell. With that money, I will buy a number of eggs, and these, when hatched, will produce chickens, and by I shall have quite a large poultry yard. Then I shall sell some of my chickens, and with the money which they will bring in, I will buy myself a new gown, which I shall wear when I go to the fair, and all the young men will admire it, and come and tell me how beautiful I am, but I shall toss my head and have nothing to say to them. Forgetting all about the pail, and suiting the action to the word, she tossed her head. Down went the pail, all the milk was spilled, and all her fine castles in the air vanished in a moment. The lesson of that story is not to count your chickens before they are hatched. The poor milkmaid was thinking too far into the future, and she forgot about the milk that she was carrying. Okay, the fifth and final story is called The Bear and the Travellers. This is from a time when travelling meant a lot of walking. There were no cars to drive, so a lot of people just walked if they wanted to get anywhere. So, once upon a time, two travellers were on the road together when a bear suddenly appeared on the scene. As soon as they saw the bear, one man sprinted for a tree at the side of the road and climbed up into the branches and hid there. The other man was not so quick as his friend, and as he could not escape, he threw himself on the ground and pretended to be dead. The bear came up and sniffed all around him, but he kept perfectly still and held his breath, for they say that a bear will not touch a dead body. And he did a good job of playing dead, because the bear then went away. When the coast was clear, the man in the tree came down and asked the other man, what was the bear whispering to him? The man replied, he told me to never travel with a friend who runs away and leaves you at the first sign of danger. The lesson of that story is that misfortune tests the sincerity of friendship. Those are some big words, but what they really mean is that true friends will stay with you when things get difficult. They won't run away and run up a tree. They'll stay with you and make sure that you're safe. Those were some lovely stories. I hope that you enjoyed them. Did they make you think about moments in your own life? Maybe moments when it was better to be slow rather than too fast, just like the tortoise and the hare? Maybe moments when it was better to be gentle and strong instead of blowing like the north wind. Perhaps, like the woodman, you've had moments in your life when you've learned that telling the truth was really the best thing to do. Perhaps, just like the milkmaid, you've gotten so lost in your imagination that you forgot what you were doing. Or maybe you've gone on an adventure with a friend And when things got difficult, you were able to see what a good friend they really were. Isn't it amazing that these stories were written so many years ago, but the lessons that they teach, we can still learn from today? Okay, that's all for now. Back to you, Captain.
Thank you so much, Nicola. Oh, I see, Deprecatus. Yes, today's stories were very didactic. Now I understand what you mean. But I have to say, you were being pretty didactic with me, just trying to teach me a new word. When am I ever going to use that word in real life? Really? When we do Aesop's Fables Part 2? We don't even know if that's on the docket yet, Deb. Remember, if you're enjoying the podcast, feel free to hit the follow button or add us to your library so that you stay with us for every episode. And if you're really enjoying the show, feel free to leave us a review. And if you write it in poem form, Nicola might even read it on a future episode. And if you're really, really, really enjoying the podcast, I don't even know what to say. You're just awesome. And we appreciate you tuning in every week. Stories from Now and Then is narrated by the amazing Nicola Ward, music by Captain Blunderface, and today's selection of Aesop's Fables was adapted by Nicola Ward and Evan Wiebe from the translation by Vernon Jones. Deprecatus, we appreciate the vocabulary lesson for today. The only thing about that is, it was great. Like learning new words, awesome, really great. I just look a little bit less knowledgeable if I don't know the word in advance. The thing is, I'm just a little bit concerned about my vocabularistic reputation here.
Stories from Now and Then.